Hello, DevOps world. My name is Rob Brown. I'm the CTO at USCIS, which is a part of DHS, Department of Homeland Security. And we are responsible for the lawful immigration for the US. I myself am an immigrant and have gone through the naturalization process and can just say I'm pretty proud to be a part of this mission of lawful immigration and really delivering an American dream to so many different people. It's pretty rewarding, quite outstanding, and just can't say enough of the great people we work with and the people that we actually are helping and serving. With that said, I'd like to talk to you today a little bit about the digital evolution of immigration at USCIS. Essentially, let's talk a little bit about what's happening today, a little bit of the history, and what does the future look like? We'll talk about some of the approaches we're taking as it relates to this digital evolution, talk a little bit about the how, and referencing some pipelines, and we'll dive into a specific pipeline. And I want to talk a little bit about what does the future of immigration benefits look like, at least from the snapshot that we have today. So just to provide a little bit of historical context here. As it relates to the applications, a lot of our applications follow Conway's Law, meaning we've got multiple operational organizations within USCIS. We have folks from the Field Operations Directorate, the Service Center Ops. We also have the refugee and asylee folks. A lot of what they do is adjudication and delivering these benefits. But historically, what we've discovered is we essentially have multiple silos within these organizations that are actually producing applications specific to their needs, yet upon further glance and review have a lot of synergy and a lot of redundancy across a lot of these applications or case management systems. In some cases, we're looking at up to an over 50 to 60% redundancy in some of the actual digital products, applications, and services that the IT shop has been delivering, and really delivering in vacuums. So when we were given the task to really unmask, think about digitizing benefits and digitizing the immigration lifecycle, we had to take a step back and really baseline what was happening. So upon that discovery and really, again, looking at Conway's Law, we started to identify the key players within these operational directorates. We started to understand who they were interfacing with, these communication patterns, and then the output and who was actually doing a lot of the delivery and how they were doing it. Now, we did have some pockets of greatness. We did go through a pretty large initiative not that long ago, which resulted in a wonderful immigration platform that actually not only provides for digital benefits as well as paper. So it was able to actually intake both types and then adjudicate them accordingly in a digital manner. So building upon those successes, and really at an enterprise-wide level that transcended not only the IT shop, but also these various directorates. Our primary approach was really looking at a reverse Conway's Law, and then coupling that with domain-driven design. So getting the right group of folks together from business as well as with the IT folks, we actually came up with a decent approach of business functions that actually made sense from a digital and paper, but predominantly digital perspective. Then thinking as we layered in microservices and serverless functions, really taking an API-driven development approach and an event-driven architecture approach that really couple and sidecar the domain driven design and providing the core architectural principles. The result, as it relates to changing those organizational patterns, was really moving out on a reverse Conway's law, starting with the architectural principles and constructs, and then describing those to the different business directorates and operational units that had and still were relatively siloed. We then started to build out layers of governance, bringing a lot of those groups together in the form of an IT steering committee so that they could have a lot of these discussions amongst themselves, being shepherded and stewarded and chaired by IT. So instead of being the marriage counselor amongst different operating groups and understanding requirements, understanding and trying to actually deliver products in siloed out fashion, we actually pushed that back upon the business folks so they could start to have those discussions themselves with the actual underlying construct of domains and focusing on the specific business functions within those domains. So this reverse Conway's law really did start to provide some assistance in managing the organization, managing the communication patterns, starting to set some of the standards in place that we could baseline, and then having an overlay of governance that provided decision makers writ large at the business as well as IT level, which then started to reduce and break down a lot of these silos. The transparency aspect was key and critical so that we could continue to minimize a lot of those silos as some of them started to form or pop up. And the other area that was made a lot of sense, specifically within the government, was the ability to manage the flow of resources that were at once very silo directed to specific areas of IT, and then have that layer so that we could actually look at what was being spent, the investments that were being planned, and then start to map those again under the construct of domains to be prioritized writ large to the OIT delivery shops as well as the infrastructure shops. So if you take a step back and you think similar to containers, and how do you, once you get past about 20 containers, how in the heck do you organize these things? The same thing could be said of how do you start to organize these domains in a cohesive manner, not only from the business perspective, all the way down to the teams that are actually delivering a lot of these products and building upon the services that exist within these domains. So we really needed some way and fashion and process to manage it. So as we moved out in our domains and really started to solidify them, which are represented here, we really did focus on those business functions. We also focused on the workflows and started to collapse and reconcile a lot of the workflows, and still are, as it relates to the digital products that transcend all of these different domains. So we could, again, further reduce the silos. We could reduce a lot of the redundancy. For example, minimizing 5 fee schedulers down to a handful that made sense in the specific domain areas as well as the specific workflows. And then actually trying to improve a lot of that communication and creating the ubiquitous language within the domains as we started to build up the right organizational constructs to support them. As is evident here, we actually started with a sort of a domain business expert, a domain technical builder, and then a product manager, which is akin, at least in our parlance right now, to sort of a technical integrator. These individuals actually have a good, solid grasp of the technology, a good, solid grasp of the piping that exists within the organization technically, as well as organizationally and through the communication patterns, so that they could manage the flow of that product amongst the business domain expert as well as the domain technical builder. So the domain experts really are sort of pulled in, dependent upon a digital product and or domain business functional area that would be needed to actually digitize that benefit type. And it could be specific to an intake, it could be specific to risk and fraud, it could even be specific to infrastructure that may be supporting the creation and digitization of that product. The domain technical builder has a good, solid understanding of what's in the domain and the business functions therein. Product manager just delivering and moving forward to essentially help shepherd along that digital product. So we have found that with the flattening of all of the business functions, so they actually form a common area and group, they can then now move out and start to identify those domain business experts or SMEs as it relates to the prioritization of the digital benefits that they want within the IT shop, providing that domain technical builder working with that business expert. One of the first things we have been working on is to actually create that ubiquitous language that exists not only within that domain but also sometimes within the subdomains therein, um, and trying to move out and embed the ubiquitous language the business speak within the code itself, and to some degree trying to instill, as we do pull requests, the ability to review the actual language within the code so that that ubiquitous language is present and can have a business expert understand to some degree what's being delivered in the actual code itself. So, what we've continued to do is really focus across a lot of the business functions, the workflows, and have seen great strides in that redundancy, great strides in the reduction of the silos, as well as, again, continuously pushing um, Conway's Law, not only from the established common business language and technical jargon, and sort of harmonizing it in these domains, but also from the architectural state and continuously pushing that back through the IT groups and teams, as well as back to the business, and essentially enabling a lot of our groups and teams that are doing the delivery to really grasp this. So, again, how are we doing this? What does it look like? So some examples of really making this work have been starting with some Wardley maps, leveraging domain canvases, looking at domain and subdomain working agreements that really help under different teams, not only within the domain focusing on subdomain interactions, but also domain to domain interactions, creating basic working agreements that could have anything from here's the primary and secondary as it relates to support, to hear all the interfaces and the observability URLs available to understand if they're up or down or if they're having any issues, to just general SLAs, I's and O's to provide that contract between the different delivery teams. The other area that's we took a lot of pride in and still do is event storming, and really moving out an event storming that sometimes can be broken out into certain areas based upon personas, or also could be something as simple as um, just building out a new type of an account that would be a part of identity management and intake. So event storming has proved to be very successful. Another area we're really focusing on and starting to see great success is product over project, and starting to test the flow framework, taking a page from the project to product book by Mick Kirsten. Another area that we're focusing on as it relates to this decoupled nature, the ubiquitous languages that exist, the various domains and subdomains, really is looking at how do we do appropriate teaming? How do we start to leverage platform teams, critical complex teams, and then the dynamic nature of just teams changing from being immature to mature to contract switches where we have to transition from one company to another to help support a lot of this work. So another area of reference is really on dynamic reteaming by Heidi Helfand. And in the government space, it seems to be extremely critical in some of the constructs and practices that are outlaid in that book. Um, and starting to move out and help educate and have industry help educate the government and how we can be more effective and efficient as teams change, as transitions happen. So again, let's go back to how are we doing this? We've talked a lot about organization. We've talked about some of the business constructs, the change, the introduction of domains, and actually seeing them start to operate, how those teams have changed, looking at products and as opposed to projects. So a lot of this really culminates in our DevSecOps ecosystem. Working across all delivery teams, implementing standards for metadata in Jira, for example, domain, subdomain tags that could be evident, to just basic deployment standards and managing product releases. So, really, our core tech here is leveraging the CloudBees Jenkins as really a dynamic, autonomous platform for all of our pipelines. And we've taken a lot of pride and a lot of effort in creating these parameterized, reusable pipelines for app delivery, infrastructure, machine learning, robotic process automation, and a lot of other platforms from ServiceNow to Salesforce. And this just helps us enable citizen development really writ large. So we're currently finalizing our CloudBees CD deployment to enable visualization of all of these pipelines that provide for fast information radiators for all teams, product managers, security, quality assurance, and even executives. And in this distributed decoupled architecture, along with all these agile teams working to deliver these domain services and digital products, we really need good product hygiene from ideation to release to deprecation. And this DevSecOps ecosystem, provided by not only this CloudBees CI, but also CD, is really enabling us to start to see where the pain points are, where we can start to ID some of the long poles in that product delivery, where some of the domain services, even core subdomain services, may need assistance and help, where quality may be lacking, or where security is non-existent. And we need to plus up and get resources in to help fix and address poems that may exist so that these folks can get to production faster. And again, help support that digital benefit creation transcending all of those domains. So we have a few constructs in place that help with this. These are organizational wide policies such as team managed deployments, as well as really the ability to move out and move fast and quick on true DevSecOps. So providing the teams with these in the government, these policies or management instructions, as well as backed by these unified parameterized pipelines that essentially get and have been ATO'd, teams do not need to think or worry about that cognitive load, as well as their ability to get to production from ideation, as well as just ongoing work. They can move with much faster velocity and focus again, just back in that domain and work more tightly in building that ubiquitous language and having a good understanding, really sometimes better than the business, so that they can build things right. So just an example of an evolution. And this is an example of an API pipeline that we've built for a specific digital product, that digital product being the I-90, which is just really at its core renewal of your green card or lawful permanent residence. So as you can see, we've actually created a parameterized pipeline that provides various development teams within those domain functional areas the ability to create and expose their specific services and APIs to an actual API gateway so it can be used externally by our third parties. Each of these you can see to illustrate the domain construct, providing it from the top or functional service. You can see we've got just basic submission or intake. We've got basic payment services, and then basic status services that can further get exposed. And these parameterized pipelines for exposing these APIs, again, provide for a developer portal, marketplace. We have these APIs organized by domain and subdomain, and then associated standards with that level of governance from security to contracts. This, again, helps provide us and our development team and our business counterparts a nice, clean construct to see real value in an organized manner that they can actually see throughout its life cycle and then manifest it externally for other folks to start to build their own applications to do business with USCIS. So we've actually taken another step as it relates to this level of organization, and we've started to work with Spotify and their Backstage open source product. And this is actually helping us to organize and manage our libraries, our frameworks, a lot of our applications, and creating that library of apps so we can enhance the developer experience. We can help provide, again, those standards that a lot of different groups need, from just core development teams, as well as to, as we start to move out and expose a lot of the citizen development groups, um, the standards that they would need, as well as the guardrails they would need, so they can perform faster in some of the platforms they're using to develop their own products. So I want to talk a little bit about the future vision here from an immigration benefit perspective. With that overlay and construct of domain-driven design, the domains that you've already seen that truly are associated with all core business functions, not specific to any group, now we can actually start to move with a higher velocity. Now we can start to organize ourselves to do continuous improvement. We can spend more time on innovation and really start to focus on what does our customer need and expose the technology, expose our services so that we can have better interaction with not only our customer, but also we can start to really think about speeding up our internal processes so we can deliver to the customer their benefit faster with higher quality and just with a good, clean experience. So, some of the core areas that we've had to work on, just from a basic digitization perspective, is just standard JSON schemas. And really, if you think about the domains in a factory manner, really, these are core factory areas that each groups and teams start to build up that help support the delivery of that digital benefit. So having good standard structured JSON schemas so that that data payload is reusable across multiple benefit types, reduces that time to delivery, so it's not net new each time. Now we just build upon it. Lots of reusability. Streamlined data has also been a core to what we've been doing and working towards. And we've invested in a lot of the pipes, the actual interfaces and integration between these domains, very akin to the JSON, very akin to the pipelines, where developers, product delivery folks really already have a platform that's pretty standardized, has certain levels of governance, as well as autonomy for those teams using it to actually just develop against and on. So another area that a big focus for us truly is our digital customer service. And this is really where we start to think about a lot of the data. A lot of this work has been done, but still a lot of work to move out on. We have started working on really true structured data across these domains. We've started to think about data democratization and have made great headway in data democratization. Really the creation of data lakes, data or lake houses, and exposing a lot of that data with the right tool sets in a plug and play manner so that it's not just the technical folks, the engineering folks that are starting to actually make sense of the data, make use of the data. We're exposing this down to specific end user groups at this stage that were typically reliant upon other groups to provide them what they needed. The other area of focus is really design systems. And how do we start to really think about CX writ large, coupled with eventing? As we move out, we've made a lot of headway in just sort of our learning and smart services, thinking about dynamic platforms. How do we really think about smart decision automation? And what does that mean as it relates to sort of a hybrid approach where a lot of these decisions at its core are based upon an individual? How can we start to think about streamlining that? How do we start to automate that? We've done a lot of work in just managed recognition, looking at better mobile experiences in a lot of our field office locations. Looking at, again, focusing more on citizen development as our workforce comes in. A lot of this new workforce have a very high level of technical capability. So, in a safe manner, exposing the tools we've just discussed in these constructs, as well as platforms where they can do low code, no code development of actual products, is a big focus for us. And then again, just data as a service, continuing to focus on data and building out good quality data products. These all build upon each other to really, again, produce adaptive services, where again, the focus is on the customer, the adjudicator, and really delivering good quality, safe benefits. Some of which we've experimented with and are moving out on is 100% bot facilitated call centers, where we can reduce the total number of human interaction, where the majority of our interactions can be done straight through bots. One of our prime examples there is our Emma bot that's resident on our My USCIS front page. And again, a big push that I am a very big fan of is back to sort of our data democratization, data as a service, is how do we start to create true citizen data engineers and scientists? So we've invested and done a lot of experimentation with Apache Spark. We've done a lot of work with ML Flow, and we've done a lot of work with Redash, so we can start to expose and provide for folks that can essentially do data engineering and to some degree do some level of data scientist work without having to have a graduate degree or a PhD or even just a BS, and providing the right tooling for them in a visual manner for them to do their job and actually start to create good data products. The other area of importance is really thinking about how we move forward with no maintenance software. What does that mean? How can we start to reduce a lot of the ops work that happens, the sustainment work that happens? How do we think about the self-healing nature of a lot of the apps that we start to deliver? And what are the end users that can benefit from that and provide immediate feedback in a sometimes reactive or a proactive manner so that we create those self-healing loops? There's a lot there to unpack, and just wanted to sort of recap by talking about this evolution specific to immigration at USCIS. We've really embraced domains. We've really embraced eventing. We've really embraced data and democratizing that data, all of which need to have silos broken, need to have good, clean transparency amongst all groups and teams, need to have a good understanding of delivering products and not projects, a good understanding of how you can have teams that are dynamic, that are in constant flux, not only just from maturity, but people, different companies, different federal oversight. All of these things become very, very important outside of any technology. And ultimately, as we start to see a lot of this change, specifically within a government setting, having good dynamic standards to some degree, good governance in place has been really critical to ensuring this happens. I was thinking that this would be very organic, but we really do need to have some level of quality here in play from a governance perspective and good standards. So with that, I do appreciate the time and wish you the best as you enjoy DevOps World. Thank you.